They play on oil drums, the Trinidad all-steel percussion orchestra, on instruments called ping-pongs, kittles, booms, and cutters.
Misery, wherever I meet Johnny.
Beating pan, they call it, and it's a fascinating performance, calypsos and all.
For me, oh, look of misery, wherever I meet Johnny. All you people will be sorry to see the grave for Johnny and the gallows there for me.
So the early beginnings of pan really goes all the way back to the enslaved Africans who were brought to the islands in the 1700s by the French planters. And they brought with them their carnival tradition, and these slaves were using their drums to make music. After emancipation in 1834, the celebration of the freed slaves became noisier and louder. Now the drums they used were what they called talking drums, and the British government at the time was afraid that they would use the talking drums to communicate to each other over distances.
The colonial masters felt that our ancestors were sending messages. They were afraid of our spirituality, and as such, they had to find a way to suppress the grassroots people.
They then banned the use of the drums, right? And that led to what we know as the Canbole riots, where, because of the fact they were told they can't do their processions, they can't have their carnival traditions.
Because through the drums, we are a very expressive people. And so even from those days, what did they do? They found the bamboos.
Banning the drums really fueled the freed slaves to continue with their cultural tradition, that is music.
They found the bamboos, and there is where the rhythm of a people, the soul of a people, came forward.
And created what we call the tambo bamboo bands. Bamboo tubes, different sizes, different lengths, varying pitch. When they hit it on the ground, it made a thumping sound, similar to the sounds that were made when they used the hand drums and communicated to each other through the drum language. So the tambo bamboo bands came on, became important, they became part of the history.
But then, again, the colonial masters, they were still afraid, and they banned the bamboo. But we had to find a way. Our people had to find a way. The ancestors found a way.
Because they couldn't use the bamboo tubes, we have the rise of what is called the metal pan bands. Now, metal pan bands would be anything that they found, the greater the dustbin covers and whatever, and they use that to continue making their music. And the metal pan bands really is what led to the precursor to the steel pan today.
And so the story is told of those resilient people who started to beat on old bins, old pans.
By beating and hitting the metal, the raised parts of the metal had a different pitch to the flat parts of the metal. Right? So we have the metal pan bands, which we will find all the metallic containers they could find, plus your kitchen utensils, your bottle and spoon, and they would hit these with either their hands, their fists, or with pieces of stick. So they continue to create music because the culture, the tradition of being able to talk to each other through music.
And then one day, on an old drum, where the sound changed after the surface was sunken in, and then it was another rhythm, and accidentally the steel pan was bounced upon.
Spree Simon played what is called the first melody pan, which consisted of 14 notes. It was called a 14-note tenor pan, and it carried about 8 pitches. And it was the first pan that we were able to play an entire melody on one pan. And this occurred on March 5th in 1946. Right, and this is why Spree Simon is given that honor today, of having created the first steel pan where a melody was played. The innovations now continued, and more with the establishment of the United States base in Trinidad, really gave rise to allowing the experimentation and innovation to continue, because they had a lot of used drums of all different sizes, all different shapes. So our pioneers would now be able to take those drums from the dump, which was located on the foreshore, and use them now to do their experiments with creating a bigger pan, the different types of pan, like the dudup and the grandig and these things. So we had the American Army base being a way that really fueled now the continued innovation to the steel band movement. The first steel bands really appeared on the road in 1945. Carnival did not occur during the years of the war, but in celebration of VE Day, which is Victory in Europe, 1945, and then VJ Day, which is Victory in Japan, August 14th, 1945, steel bands came out on the road to celebrate the end of the World Wars. And that showcased the advances that occurred in the instrument during the time when there was no activity, no carnival because of the war. And then the 1950s, 1951, TASPO, Trinidad All Percussion Steel Orchestra, went to the Festival of Britain and performed. Now, when they got there, remember they traveled by sea. These are steel pans. They weren't really, like today, chromed. So they got there and the pans were kind of rusty looking. So when they came out to perform, everybody wondered, what's going on here? Some old drum they come with and whatever. But imagine when they started to perform and hearing the kind of music coming out of these old dirty looking rubbish bins, rubbish pans, as some people would say. Really, that was the first introduction of the steel pan to the world.